The Vexlarian invasion fleet hovered above Earth's atmosphere, a collection of gleaming metal that would have been beautiful if it wasn't about to ruin everyone's day. Commander Krell stood on the bridge of the flagship, his 6 tentacle arms folded across his carapace in what passed for smug satisfaction among his species. "Another primitive backwater," Krell announced, glancing at the holographic projection of Earth rotating slowly before him. "Look at them. Still using combustion engines and arguing about whether their climate is changing. Pathetic." Lieutenant Pex, a younger Vexlarian with only 4 tentacle arms the other 2 would grow in once he'd conquered enough worlds to be considered mature, cleared his throat. "Sir, our intelligence suggests they have nuclear capabilities." Krell waved a dismissive tentacle. "Please, they're too afraid to use them. Begin standard planetary subjugation procedure. I want landing parties at all strategic locations within the hour." "Yes, Commander," Pex replied, clearly less confident than his superior. "And what about these energy readings our sensors are picking up? They don't match any known." "Probably just their primitive power plants," Krell interrupted. "This is my 14th invasion, Pex. Trust me, they all go the same way. By nightfall, we'll be accepting their unconditional surrender and picking out which of their world leaders to keep as pets." Within minutes, the invasion began. Sleek dropships descended through Earth's atmosphere, landing at carefully selected sites across the planet. Military bases, government buildings, power plants, all the usual targets covered in galactic domination for beginners. The handbook every Vexlarian cadet had to memorize. Earth's militaries responded exactly as expected, chaotically and ineffectively. Fighter jets scrambled, only to be swatted from the sky by the invaders' point defense systems. Tanks rumbled toward landing sites, their shells bouncing harmlessly off Vexlarian energy shields. "Commander," the communications officer called out. "We're receiving strange reports from Landing Group 7 in the region they call Norway." Krell sighed dramatically. "What is it now?" "They're reporting, sir. They're claiming the mountain is moving." "The mountain is what?" "Moving, sir. And apparently it's very angry." Private Glix was having a terrible day. His first invasion, and now he was running for his life from a mountain that had sprouted arms and legs. Well, not exactly arms and legs, more like massive stone protrusions that somehow propelled 2 million tons of angry granite after him and his squad. This wasn't in the manual. Glix screamed into his communicator as he dashed between pine trees, the ground quaking beneath his feet. The manual said they'd have tanks and guns and maybe some crude missile systems. It said nothing about moving mountains. Behind him, the entity that would later be named Behemoth, a creature of living stone nearly 300 feet tall, roared. The sound wasn't made by any vocal cords, but was the grinding of stone against stone, amplified to impossible levels. It sounded exactly like what it was, a mountain's fury. Jack Murphy had been having a perfectly normal morning until then. Wake up, brush teeth, contemplate existential dread while eating cornflakes, drive to his dead-end job at the local gas station. The alien invasion had been an unwelcome addition to his routine, but somehow less surprising than it should have been. Years of sci-fi movies had prepared him for this moment. What those movies hadn't prepared him for was witnessing a mountain stand up and start punching alien ships out of the sky. "What the hell?" Jack muttered, pulling his beat-up Corolla to the side of the road. He fumbled for his phone, recording as Behemoth grabbed a Vexlarian dropship and crushed it like a soda can. On the flagship, Commander Krell was not having a good time. Reports were coming in from all landing sites, and they all contained variations of "Sir, the local geography is trying to kill us." "Impossible," Krell shouted, slamming a tentacle against his command console. "Send in the heavy armor. Deploy the orbital cannons." Lieutenant Pex consulted a monitor. "Sir, Landing Group 12 in the region called Amazon is reporting that the trees have, sir. The trees have wrapped themselves around our troops and are digesting them." "Trees don't digest things, Pex." "These ones apparently do, sir." Across the globe, Earth's ancient defenders were awakening. In Norway, Behemoth continued its rampage, each footstep causing localized seismic events. In the Amazon, a vast entity composed of intertwined vegetation later dubbed Verdant absorbed alien technology and troops alike. In the Pacific Ocean, a cyclonic entity named Tempest formed, generating hurricane-force winds that specifically target alien vessels while leaving human ships untouched. Jack watched the news reports flood in on his phone, mouth agape. The world was going crazy, but somehow it felt right. As if the Earth itself had finally had enough and decided to fight back. The Vex-Larian command ship had transformed from an orderly military vessel into something resembling a call center during a holiday sale. Aliens rushed back and forth, shouting reports, but while Commander Krell's complexion shifted through various shades of purple, the Vex-Larian equivalent of a human turning red with rage. "How is this happening?" he bellowed, now standing on his command chair for added dramatic effect. "We've conquered 17 star systems. We made the Arcturian Empire pay us tribute. We're getting our tentacles handed to us by a planet whose dominant species still thinks reality TV is entertainment." Lieutenant Pex approached cautiously. "Sir, we've compiled the data from all landing sites. The entities appear to be manifestations of Earth's elemental forces. They're not technological in nature. Our sensors classify them as, well, the closest translation would be magic." "Magic?" Krell's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Did you just use the M word on my bridge, Lieutenant?" "The Science Division prefers unexplained energy phenomena, sir." "That's better. Now, what are we doing to counter these phenomena?" "We've quadrupled our firepower at all engagement points," Pex replied. "And we've called for reinforcements from the home fleet." Meanwhile, Professor Mira Okafor was having the most validating day of her academic career. After 15 years of being ridiculed by her colleagues for her theories on ancient Earth Guardians, she was now watching them come to life on international television. "I knew it," she exclaimed, pacing around her cluttered university office. The petroglyphs weren't metaphorical. The ancient texts weren't myths. She grabbed a dusty tome from her bookshelf, flipping to a dog-eared page showing a crude drawing of what looked suspiciously like Behemoth. Across campus, alien troops were rounding up humans for questioning. Mira grabbed her research, a backpack of essentials, and slipped out the back entrance. She needed to find the nexus, the place described in ancient texts where humans could communicate with the Guardians. Jack Murphy, meanwhile, had made the questionable decision to follow Behemoth. Something about the stone titan fascinated him, drew him forward despite the obvious danger. He'd abandoned his car miles back, hiking through destroyed forest where the Guardian had passed. When he crested a hill and found himself face to, well, not face, but whatever you'd call the front part of a living mountain, with Behemoth, Jack expected to die. Instead, the massive entity paused, a grinding sound emerging from its core that somehow felt like recognition. "A hi?" Jack offered weakly. Behemoth lowered a colossal stone appendage, palm open, in front of Jack. Without understanding why, Jack stepped onto it. The Guardian raised him up, and for a moment Jack felt a connection, ancient, powerful, and somehow familiar. That's when the Vex-Larian heavy artillery arrived, and everything went explosively wrong. "So let me get this straight," Jack said, ducking behind a fallen tree as alien search drones buzzed overhead. "You're telling me that I'm somehow connected to that stone thingy?" "Behemoth," Mira corrected, clutching her ancient texts to her chest. "And yes, according to my research, certain bloodlines were linked to the Guardians. The texts speak of humans who could speak with the old ones and direct their wrath." Jack stared at her. "Lady, I'm an assistant manager at Gas & Go. The only thing I direct is where people put the nozzle when they're done pumping." Their chance meeting had been pure cosmic coincidence or fate, if you preferred. Jack, blasted clear of Behemoth during the artillery strike, had literally tumbled down a hill and landed at Mira's feet as she fled the university. The connection was unmistakable, Mira insisted. Behemoth recognized you. That's why we need to find the Guardian Nexus. It's the only place where we can fully awaken your abilities. My abilities, Jack repeated flatly. Right. A drone zoomed closer, and they both pressed themselves against the ground. The forest around them had been largely untouched by the invasion. The Vexlarians seemed to be giving large woodland areas a wide berth after the Verdant incident. Aboard his personal hunter ship, Lieutenant Pex reviewed the tracking data. The two humans are moving toward the mountains, he informed his squad. Commander Krell wants them captured, not killed. Especially the male. Our sensors indicate he may have some connection to the entities. Lieutenant, one of his troops asked, why are the humans stopping at those colorful buildings with the yellow arches? Pex consulted the Earth Cultural Database. It appears to be a fast food restaurant. Humans require frequent caloric intake. He paused. What are those golden potato strips they're consuming? The database calls them French fries, sir. Intriguing. Make a note to collect samples before we sterilize this planet. Inside the McDonald's, Jack was eating his third order of fries while Mira spread her maps across the table. Ignoring the curious stares from the few other customers brave or foolish enough to be out during an alien invasion. The Nexus should be here, she said, pointing to a location in the mountains. Ancient texts describe it as the meeting place of earth and sky, where the old ones slumber until need awakens them. That's really specific and completely useless at the same time, Jack commented, mouth full. A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the window, they could see Vexlarian troops disembarking from a transport vehicle. They found us, Mira whispered. Jack froze, French fry halfway to his mouth. Then something strange happened. The ground beneath the restaurant trembled. Not violently, but with purpose. Cracks appeared in the parking lot, spreading toward the aliens. Are you doing that? Mira asked, eyes wide. I don't think so, Jack replied, but he could feel something, a connection, a pull, like the one he'd felt with Behemoth. As if the very earth was responding to his fear. The cracks reached the Vexlarians, widening suddenly into fissures. Troops tumbled in, their screams cut short as the ground snapped shut again. Lieutenant Pex, watching from his ship, felt an uncomfortable sensation in his thorax, the Vexlarian equivalent of human nausea. This was not how invasions were supposed to go. The ancient temple had been hidden for millennia, its stone entrance overgrown with vegetation and nearly invisible against the mountainside. Jack stared at the symbols carved into the archway, swirling patterns that seemed to move if you looked at them too long. We're here, Mira breathed, running her fingers over the stonework. The Guardian Nexus. Great, Jack replied, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Their journey through the mountains had been suspiciously easy whenever Vexlarian forces got too close. Mysterious earthquakes, sudden rock slides, or convenient fog banks would appear, allowing them to escape. Now what? Now, said a voice behind them, you surrender to the mighty Vexlarian Empire. They spun around to find Commander Krell himself, flanked by elite guards and a very uncomfortable-looking Lieutenant Pex. Krell had abandoned his ship to personally lead this mission, a decision that had left his bridge officers exchanging concerned glances. Commander, Pex began hesitantly. Perhaps we should exercise caution. If this is indeed connected to the entities. Silence, Pex. Krell snapped. I will not have my invasion ruined by primitive rock monsters and talking plants. He leveled a weapon at Jack. You dirt creature. Our sensors indicate you have some connection to these phenomena. You will tell me how to control them, or I will vaporize your companion. Mira clutched her books tighter. The Guardians can't be controlled, especially not by outsiders. They're bound to Earth itself. Everything can be controlled, Krell snarled. Everything can be conquered, Jack felt something stir within him, not fear this time, but anger. You know what your problem is? You came here expecting us to be easy pickings. You never even considered that maybe, just maybe, our planet might have its own defense system. As he spoke, the carvings on the temple entrance began to glow. The ground vibrated beneath their feet. Sir, Pex urged, we should retreat. Coward, Krell shouted. Fire. Destroy them in this temple. The elite guards raised their weapons, but before they could fire, the temple entrance cracked open. Light pure, blinding, living light poured out. It took shape, forming a humanoid figure that towered over them all. Unlike the other guardians, this one Lumina appeared almost delicate, as if woven from sunbeams and starlight. Oh, Jack breathed. That's new. Krell fired at the light being, his weapon's energy blast passing harmlessly through it. Lumina turned its attention to the Vex Larian commander, and for the first time in his career, Commander Krell felt fear. Pex, making a career-defining decision, dropped his weapon. Commander, I formally suggest immediate withdrawal from this planet. Traitor. Krell screeched, turning his weapon on his lieutenant. That's when Jack finally understood what Mira had been trying to tell him. He stepped forward, somehow knowing exactly what to do, and spoke directly to Lumina. They came to conquer us, to take our world, show them why that was a mistake. Lumina nodded, a simple movement that conveyed ancient understanding, and then it began to sing. The sound wasn't audible, it vibrated through the atoms of the air itself, a harmonic that called to the other guardians across the planet. Mira grabbed Jack's hand, her eyes shining with academic ecstasy. The convergence. It's happening. Lieutenant Pex, demonstrating uncommon wisdom for a Vex Larian, began backing slowly away from his commander. The sky above the temple split open, not from Vex Larian weapons, but from Tempest's arrival, a swirling vortex of air and water that somehow conveyed sentience and purpose. The ground erupted as Behemoth emerged from the earth itself, having tunneled through the planet's crust to answer Lumina's call. From the distant forest, Verdant approached, a walking wall of vegetation that consumed everything in its path except the native wildlife, which it gently placed aside like a considerate apocalypse. Commander Krell, to his very limited credit, did not run. Instead, he called for total planetary bombardment from the fleet, apparently deciding that if he couldn't have Earth, nobody could. Sir, the fleet isn't responding, one of his guards reported, voice shaking. Something's interfering with our communications. That something was Lumina, who had extended its light self into the upper atmosphere, creating a shield that not only blocked communications but was now actively pushing the Vex Larian ships out of orbit. Jack stood at the center of it all, feeling the Guardian's power flowing through him. He didn't control them, that wasn't how it worked. They weren't weapons to be aimed. They were aspects of Earth itself, and Jack was simply the translator, the connection point between human need and ancient power. This planet is protected, Jack said, surprised by the authority in his own voice. Leave now, and tell others what you found here. Commander Krell, in his final act of defiance, charged at Jack with a battle cry that would have been impressive if it hadn't ended in an undignified squawk as Behemoth casually flicked him into the stratosphere with one stone finger. The remaining Vex Larians, including Pex, immediately dropped their weapons and raised their tentacles in surrender. 3 days later, the last Vex Larian ship departed Earth's solar system, transmitting a simple message to the galactic community. The Earth classification upgraded to absolutely do not invade. Indigenous life forms possess planetary defense system of unknown power. Also, they have these things called French fries that are surprisingly addictive. Jack and Mira found themselves appointed as Earth's official guardian liaisons by a hastily assembled global council. Their job was simple in concept but complex in execution, and maintain communication with the ancient entities that had saved humanity and ensure they didn't decide humans were as problematic as the aliens. Lieutenant Pex, having formally requested political asylum, became Earth's first extraterrestrial immigrant. He set up a cultural exchange program and was particularly focused on introducing Vexillarian cuisine to humans, although his first restaurant failed when customers discovered the signature dish literally tried to escape from their plates. "You know," Jack said one evening, as he and Mira watched Behemoth return to its mountain form for a well-deserved rest, "I used to think my life was going nowhere. Gas station assistant manager with student debt, and a cat that hates me. And now you're Earth's ambassador to ancient elemental beings," Mira completed, smiling. "Funny how things work out. The cat still hates me, though." Somewhere in the depths of space, Commander Krell, having been miraculously caught by a passing Vexillarian garbage scow, nursed his wounded pride and 6 broken tentacles. The report he filed would become legendary in galactic military circles, not for its account of the invasion, but for the creative expletives he invented to describe Earth and its defenders. And across the galaxy, word spread about the small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system, the planet that hits back.